when 50 Cent was shot 9 times outside his grandmother's house. His world was turned upside down. The record label broke the contract, his friends abandoned him, and his enemies promised to finish the job if he ever dared to show up on the streets again. But instead of disappearing, he came back with a cold smile. A body full of scars and music that sounded like a celebration. But in reality, it hit a heavy answer for all those who tried to go against him. I'm Guilherme, and today on Decifrahits, I'll reveal the true story behind 50 Cent's Indie Club. Few people mention a detail about Indie Club. It wasn't just the first contact for many people who, like me, discovered and fell in love with hip-hop through this banger. It was also a turning point in 50 Cent's life, who, contrary to what many people think when he wrote this song, didn't have any of the things he talked about in the lyrics in the video. Quite the opposite, actually. He had just been shot 9 times, was still being hunted by the same guy who tried to end his life. And he almost had his biggest dream destroyed, if not for a small detail that altered his entire path. Even now, over 20 years later, few realize how much. The song In Da Club brings references to all these problems and hides messages that tell this whole story. But even though it was released in 2003, the story of In Da Club actually begins a few years earlier, more precisely in 1999. That year, Curtis Jackson was just a guy from the outskirts of New York who dreamed of becoming a successful rapper. And even though he was only 24 years old, the opinion of those who got in his way was unanimous. When this guy set a goal in his mind, nothing and no one could stop him. At the time, 50 Cent had just signed a contract with Columbia Records to release what would be his first album, Power of the Dollar. But little did he know that this album would never be released and that this contract would soon bring him serious problems. As soon as 50 Cent entered the Columbia building for the first time, producers and executives quickly noticed. The guy was a machine when it came to work. In just 2 weeks, he recorded an incredible 36 songs, 18 of which were enough to complete his debut album. But despite his talent and effort, 50 Cent soon realized that the partnership with Columbia wouldn't be good for him at all. I was at Columbia, and they didn't even know how to promote rap artists. The release date for my album was coming up, and almost nobody knew about it or about my music. Alright, they made cute posters and stuff, really colorful pieces of paper. But if people don't know your music, they're not going to buy your album. In other words, even with the contract signed, 50 Cent had to build things up, which unfortunately was nothing new to him. After losing his mother at 8 years old and growing up without ever knowing his own father, he learned early on how to fend for himself. In that situation, I was the one who needed to create a song that would make people ask, who is this 50 Cent guy? And that's exactly what he did. On August 10th, 1999, 50 Cent released the single How to Rob. The track was a joke describing how he would hypothetically rob some famous rappers like Will Smith, Busta Rhymes, and Jay-Z. Although some of the artists took it in stride, others saw it as a form of disrespect, which was great for 50 Cent, who realized that mentioning the names of famous people was a tactic that worked really well to get the attention he needed. And in the early 2000s, just a few months before the release of his album, Power of the Dollar, 50 Cent decided to repeat this formula. The problem is that this time, he ended up angering some pretty dangerous people. The new track was called Ghetto Cool Run, and in it, 50 Cent decided to mention real figures from New York's criminal underworld, including drug dealers who were still active on the streets and heavily armed. When you hear about my neighborhood, you hear about the Supreme team. Everyone is afraid of Prince and respects Supreme. If you still don't get it, I'll explain it better. Supreme is the businessman, Prince is the killer. Supreme was Kenneth McGriff, leader of the Supreme Team Gang, who controlled the South Jamaica neighborhood where he was born and lived. 50 Cent Prince was Gerald Miller, Supreme's nephew. But even though these names were already well known throughout New York, circulating for decades in newspapers and books of the time, and even though 50 Cent's intention was just to pay tribute to the guys, unfortunately Supreme didn't see it that way. And on May 24th, 2000, the reckoning came. It was a cold day in the South Jamaica neighborhood in Queens. 50 Cent was inside the car parked in front of his grandmother's house, about to leave, when a man approached the window, pulled out a 9mm, and fired 9 times. Point blank. 50 Cent was hit in the hands, arms, hip, and both legs. One of the bullets pierced his cheek, knocking out a tooth and tearing up his tongue. At that moment, everything indicated that he wouldn't make it out of this alive. Rushed to the hospital, 50 Cent underwent emergency surgeries and a complex facial reconstruction process. The doctors were clear, even if he survived, he might never walk, talk, or much less sing again. Supreme wanted to destroy 50 Cent, not just physically, but also his dream of becoming a successful rapper. And when he found out that 50 had survived, he sent his henchmen to threaten all the record labels not to sign a contract with him or even sell his records. The same went for DJs, anyone who dared to play 50 Cent songs at clubs or neighborhood parties. They would be disrespecting the Supreme team and putting their lives at serious risk. Afraid of retaliation, Columbia Records not only canceled the album Power of the Dollar, but also terminated their contract with 50 Cent, leaving the rapper completely helpless. Besides that, many of his friends ended up abandoning him or distancing themselves after he was shot in his own neighborhood, right in front of his grandmother's house. It was a big sign of lack of morals and respect. In the hood, 50 Cent felt like he couldn't trust anyone anymore and that he wasn't even safe in his own area. That's why, after 13 days in the hospital, he decided to leave and continue his recovery far away from New York. Rumors started to circulate that he had taken refuge in Canada, but in reality he was in the neighboring state of Pennsylvania, more precisely in the Pocono Mountains, with his then-girlfriend and their son, Marcus. During the months he was recovering, 50 Cent stayed almost completely secluded in cave mode for at least 6 weeks. He needed a walker to get around the house and relied on his girlfriend's help to perform basic tasks. His speech was impaired, his jaw was immobilized, and he was fed with the help of straws and thick liquids. He didn't know if he would ever have his voice again, but he had an unshakable certainty that if he ever did, he would have something much greater to say. In his autobiography, From Pieces to 8, 50 Cent wrote, "After I was shot 9 times at close range and didn't die, I started to think that I have a purpose in this life." In fact, his voice was never the same again, if before it was high-pitched and youthful. Now the voice was rough and heavy, carrying the weight of someone who had faced death. Determined to get back on his feet, 50 Cent made a full recovery in 5 months, helped by an intense workout routine that gave him a muscular physique. Despite that, he knew he wasn't bulletproof. And every time he had to go back to his neighborhood, whether to visit his grandparents or to try to continue his career, he was still at serious risk of losing his life. According to this document from the United States Federal Court, investigators discovered that Supreme was tracking 50 Cent's movements whenever he set foot in New York, and that they were even continuing to monitor him. Still in 2002, the year when 50 would write the song In Da Club, the intercepted messages show that Supreme received constant updates via pager, sent by associates of Murder Incorporated. By the way, this was the record label responsible for the career of rapper Ja Rule, one of 50 Cent's biggest rivals, and it was also the label that Supreme, by the way, was the main supporter and financier of. Supreme saw in Ja Rule and Murder Incorporated a great opportunity to launder money from crime. And because of that, he used his influence and criminal network to protect his interests and try to eliminate anyone who could get in the way of his plans, especially 50 Cent. In one of the messages sent on October 22, 2002, Supreme even called 50 Cent a snitch, someone who talks too much. And on the 30th of that same month, disc jockey Jam Master Jay, 50 Cent's greatest mentor, was shot and killed inside his own recording studio. According to this document, the police began investigating whether the disc jockey was killed for defying the blacklist imposed by Supreme against 50 Cent. It was because of situations like these that 50 Cent started to walk around and perform at his shows, always wearing bulletproof vests. Yeah, it wasn't to show off or to look like a gangster, but because he really needed to.
When you wear a vest, what's that mindset like? You put on the vest, you always walk around with 4 or 6 bodyguards, you have a bulletproof car, you're just waiting for something to happen, right?
No, I just know the possibilities. I think if Tupac had been wearing a vest, he'd still be alive. If Biggie had been wearing a vest, he'd still be alive.
If he wanted to stay alive, 50 Cent knew he needed to disappear for a while, but like I said, when he set a goal in his mind, it was to go all the way. He wouldn't let his dream of becoming a successful rapper slip away, even under threat of death. As soon as he recovered from the attack, 50 Cent made a connection that would change everything. He called a guy named Zamani XL, who, by the way, had also been mentored by Jam Master. Jay Zamani was a producer and longtime partner of 50 Cent, and when he found out that 50 needed a place to get back to recording music, he offered the studio he had set up in his basement. At 24 years old, Zamani had just bought his first house in Westbury, Long Island. The thing is, nobody knew about this yet, and nobody even knew where he lived. Even so, the fact that Zamani offered his house for 50 to settle in was an act of great bravery and camaraderie. Because, as you saw, people were literally being killed. For supporting 50 Cent, 50 accepted the invitation. But, still wary after being betrayed by some friends, he didn't go there unprotected, as Zamani XL himself said in an interview in 2009. The guy was armed and everything. Every move was calculated. First, he got out of the car, checked out the area, inspected the house. Really military style, the guy was a gangster, a real tough guy, making sure the area was safe. 50 Cent then called his partners Tony Yo and Lloyd Banks. And from then on, Zamani's basement became the headquarters of the team that 50 Cent called Guerrilla Unit, or the famous G Unit. In an interview, Zamani even said that he had never seen anyone work with as much hunger and drive as 50 Cent. He recorded all the songs in 18 days, making 2 songs a day. I've worked with guys who would stay there for 18 days and only make 2 songs. And this guy 50 made 38. Despite the insane recording pace, 50 still hadn't managed to get a contract with any record label to promote his work. But instead of waiting for a new opportunity, he adopted a strategy that would change the game from then on. 50 would take the hottest beats from the biggest rappers of the time, like Jay-Z and Nas, and recreate his music over them with much better hooks. Besides that, 50 started releasing his songs through so-called mixtapes, which were CDs recorded and distributed independently by himself. According to Zamani XL himself, even before officially releasing the mixtape, they were already spreading some tracks among the main DJs of the time. Warming up the market, we made sure to reach all the disc jockeys who were popular at that time. We sent it to Disc Jockey Clue, to Envy, to Doo Wop. These DJs were the voices of the neighborhoods. They ruled the underground radio stations and the sound cars on the corners. And since the tracks were distributed simultaneously to several influential DJs, any attempt at retaliation by Supreme would draw too much attention. This allowed the mixtapes to start circulating on the streets, making 50 Cent's name spread by word of mouth. On May 21, 2002, 50 Cent officially released his first mixtape, Guess Who's Back? Guess Who's Back? With more than 10 unreleased tracks recorded after the attack. At a time when gangsta rap was still at its peak, With the recent passing of Tupac and Notorious Biggie, everyone wanted to know who that new gangster rapper was, who survived 9 shots and rapped with fire in his eyes. From that moment on, this story starts to go through a series of absurd and unbelievable coincidences. To begin with, guess who's back? It wasn't just the name of 50 Cent's mixtape, but it was also a phrase repeated in one of the biggest hits of the time by one of the world's greatest rappers, Eminem. Besides that, 50 Cent had just hired a new lawyer, Tell Settlemeyer, who, by the way, happened to be a colleague of a guy named Paul Rosenberg, who, in turn, was the manager. Of whom exactly? The lawyer liked it so much. 50 Cent's mixtape, which he took to Paul Rosenberg, and Paul finally gave the CD to Eminem. At the time, Eminem already had his own label, Shady Records, which, by the way, was affiliated with Aftermath Entertainment, which in turn belonged to one of the greatest rap producers in history, Dr. Dre. So, that tape getting into Eminem's hands was a huge deal. His reaction was immediate. In a 2003 Baltimore Sun interview, Eminem said, "When I heard 50's CD for the first time, I was just listening as a fan and loving it. I showed his music to Dr. Dre and he gave the green light. So I called 50 and I said, 'Man, if you're up for it, we'd love for you to come work with us.'" 50 Cent accepted the invitation, and the next day, Eminem bought a ticket for 50 to fly straight to Los Angeles. But despite Eminem's excitement, 50 was still cautious. And you can understand why, right? He even talked about it on a podcast in 2023. "It was crazy. I thought it was a prank. I was so suspicious that I went wearing a bulletproof vest. When I got there, Eminem said, 'Let me give you a hug. This is going to be amazing.'" He was so excited that it made me question if all of that was real. In fact, Eminem was so excited that he barely let 50 talk, as he himself said in this speech in 2020.
"I was so excited to meet him, so I started rapping all his songs to him. I barely let him speak, and I kind of was trying to show him how into him I was, right? But I think I might have probably overdid it."
Despite the magnitude of this meeting and the incredible opportunity that was in front of them, there were people who advised 50 Cent not to sign with Eminem's label. Steve Stout, an executive at Columbia Records who had already worked with 50, told him that Eminem was a joke in rap, and that because of that, he would never be able to boost his career. Stout's advice couldn't have been more stupid. That moment represented a perfect opportunity not only for 50 Cent, but for hip-hop culture as a whole. We were witnessing a rare alignment of the stars, something so unlikely and so symbolic that not even the best screenwriter in the world could imagine a story like this. Luckily for us, 50 ignored Steve Stout's advice. And on June 17th, 2002, 50 Cent signed a $1 million contract with Eminem's label, Shady Records, and as a result, with the label above it, Aftermath Entertainment, owned by Dr. Dre. But despite the high amount, in an interview, the host Jimmy Kimmel even suggested that 50 Cent had been exploited in the deal and that other producers would have paid much more for his talent. At the time, while Dr. Dre denied the claim with an uncomfortable smile, 50 responded humbly, saying, "He gave me $1 million. For someone who came from the hood, that's a lot of money. The first thing I did was buy a car for my grandmother." The reality is that 50 has always been a very smart guy, unlike many artists who blow all the money they get on superficial things and then end up owing the record label. 50 Cent knew that money wasn't his yet. It was just an advance, and he would still have to work hard to pay back that heavy investment. As he raps in a line from In the Club, "I'm totally focused. Man, my mind is on my money. I got $1 million from the deal, but I'm still hustling." And in fact, despite the deal, 50 Cent still needed to be tested and approved by his new mentors, and the test wouldn't be easy at all. Before investing in a full album, Dr. Dre and Eminem asked him to make a new mixtape. To see if the guy was really sharp, 50 then called his G-Unit partners, and together they produced the mixtape No Mercy, No Fear in less than a month. And inside it stood out a brand new heavy track by 50 Cent, the famous wankster. Many people saw this song as a subtle attack on J.A. Rule. And even though he always denied it, people kept calling the radio stations asking them to play that one, the one they said was against J.A. Rule. That, along with Fistacente's remarkable flow and the catchy chorus, made the track Wankster blow up on the radio stations in the United States. For the first time. Fisticente was known not only in the underground scene of his hometown, but also in the mainstream all over the country. Besides, the new mixtape was his first one released under the guidance of Eminem and Dr. Dre, which made it even easier for people who had never heard of Fisticente to give him a chance. That explains a line in Indie Club where he says, "Now that I'm with Dre, everyone shows love." When you sell like that, Eminem gets lots of fan love. At the time of this mixtape, Eminem was still working on his movie, 8 Mile, which would be released in November of that same year. And he liked the track Wankster so much that he decided to include it on the movie's official soundtrack, which would give even more visibility to 50 Cent. Despite that, all the visibility 50 Cent had gotten up to that point was as a supporting act. So it was about time to really put his talent to the test and start investing in the production of his first solo album, Get Rich or Die Tryin'. Get Rich or Die Trying. At that point, it was clear that 50 Cent had already proven his worth to Eminem. But now it was his turn to be tested by the greatest hip-hop producer in history. When he began work on the new album, Dr. Dre called 50 Cent to his office. As a first test, he asked 50 to create a rap over this beat right here. Yes, this was the beginning of what would become the song In the Club. But the problem was that the beat sounded a bit offbeat, and with just it, without the other instruments, it was very hard to rap consistently. Dre could even add other instruments, but first he needed to hear someone rapping over it to understand which direction to take with the instrumental. But no one had kept up with that beat. Just so you know, Dr. Dre had created that beat over 6 months ago and had already offered it to several artists. However, they all turned it down. The first was the rapper Rakim, who even tried but couldn't find a flow that fit well with the beat. Then, Eminem suggested giving the beat to his group D12, thinking about including it on the 8 Mile soundtrack, but D12 also gave up. But the moment 50 Cent heard that beat, the song simply came to his mind as if it were a divine intervention, and his flow came out perfect. Regardless of the absence of other instruments, even Dr. Dre himself didn't believe anyone could master that instrumental like 50 Cent did, as he said in an interview with Music Television in 2003. The first time Dre heard me rapping on In the Club, he said, "Man, I didn't think you would go that way, but, you know, it works." He was probably thinking of going in a different direction with that song. Dr. Dre wasn't just surprised by that, but also by 50 Cent's determination and insane work ethic.
50 was amazing when we first worked together in the studio. We agreed I'd handle half of the first album, and Eminem would do the other half. And my experience working with 50, it was only about 7 days in the studio for my entire half. You know what I mean? He'd lay down a track, write and rap it, then immediately ask for another, repeating the process.
50 Cent's rhymes and flow. Dr. Dre finally understood the direction that instrumental needed to take. The problem is that this direction was really quite different from what he was used to, both in terms of musical style and in the choice of instruments. That's when he remembered an old friend, the multi-instrumentalist Mike Elizondo. Mike had already collaborated with iconic rock bands like Mastodon and Linkin Park. He was the perfect person to enrich the musical foundation of that song, and that's exactly what he did. First, Mike added a subtle shaker, syncing the beat's rhythm and adding more energy to the instrumental. The second instrument was the keyboard. Creating the melody, which became Indie Club's trademark. Then he added the bass, adding a strong groove that anchored the song's foundation. Next, Elizondo added violin arrangement. Which reinforced the impact of the keyboard and added a cinematic tension to the song. The fifth instrument was guitar. With fast chords that seemed to reflect the accelerated cadence and relentless determination of 50 Cent. And finally, he included the organ, which not only filled out the background of the song, but also brought a sense of menace to the track. Almost as if it were saying, this isn't a party song, it's a warning. Like most of the album, Get Rich or Die Tryin' had a heavy and dark tone. 50 Cent felt that this track needed to bring something different. Lyrics that didn't hide the difficulties he was still living through, but at the same time conveyed overcoming and victory. Things he had been searching for years, as I said back when 50 Cent recorded Indie Club. He was still being hunted by those who tried to end his life and was far from having the success and material possessions he flaunts in his music. Even so, he sings as if all of that were already real, almost as if he were writing his own destiny in every line. My flow. My shows brought me the money that bought all my luxurious things. My house, my cars, my clothes, my jewelry. Bro, I made it, and I'm still succeeding. 50 Cent trusted in the power of his word, and more than that, he had unshakable faith in what he was capable of achieving.
I'm recording myself now, before the song becomes a hit, because I want you to know that I already knew it would be a hit, before it became a hit.
And it was precisely with the goal of reaching a worldwide audience that 50 Cent used a very smart strategy to start the song, with a phrase that anyone could associate with a moment of victory and celebration.
This is a reason for you to enjoy yourself on the highest level. It's my birthday, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna have a good time, your friends are around, you go out. So that just popped into my head while I was hearing the music, and I just said it. Simplicity is the key to a lot of the hits, a lot of the great things.
But even as he was fiercely climbing towards success, 50 Cent never stopped considering those who had been by his side from the beginning. When it was time to make the chorus for In the Club, he did just that. He remembered a line created by his partner, Lloyd Banks, who once improvised in the studio the rhyme, "Find me in the club, bottle full of bub," meaning find me in the club, bottle full of champagne. And that's why 50 Cent decided to honor his partner in the chorus. But that wasn't the only tribute to his friend in the song. In another line, 50 Cent recalls a piece of advice that Lloyd Banks had given him before he signed with Eminem. "I'll tell you what Banks said to me. Bro, go ahead. Change your style if they hate, let them hate, and watch your money pile up." In an interview with Music Television in 2003, Lloyd Banks talked about this conversation he had with 50, saying, "Before he signed with Shady Aftermath, I told 50, forget the haters, let's focus on us. Change your style, do it your way. If we want to sell more records, we can't try to please everyone." On December 10th, 2002, the filming for the music video of Indie Club finally began. But while everyone was getting ready to start filming, an unexpected visitor showed up on set. It was Suge Knight, one of the most feared and dangerous moguls in the music industry, and someone many believe was involved in the deaths of rappers Tupac and Notorious Biggie. Suge was a declared enemy of Dr. Dre, had already threatened Eminem, and apparently now he had his eyes on 50 Cent as well. No one knew what this guy wanted showing up there uninvited. but they knew it wasn't anything good. Anyway, Suge's mere presence was enough to cause total chaos on the film set.
He arrived on the set of Inda Club and everyone shouted, "Sug is outside!" People ran out quickly. People were running and knocking everything over, and I was in front of the camera like this.
According to the rapper Bizarre from D12, this was the kind of situation that started happening after 50 Cent joined them. That changed the way we moved around. You know, we had to move like soldiers. You know? Bulletproof vests, armored cars, you get it. Before 50 Cent, we didn't have to worry about that. But in the same interview, Bizarre remembered that 50 Cent never got intimidated by anyone. Even when Suge Knight showed up on the set of Inda Club, bringing with him more than 30 members of his gang.
What's up, man? What do you want to do?
Bang him!
Yeah, hit them. What do you want to do? Suge looked at him, took a puff of his cigar, blew it out, did like this, and then he left. A movie, probably some Los Angeles Termination type stuff.
After Suge left, the crew finally started filming. The video, directed by Philip Atwill, starts by showing a Hummer H2, a machine that has since become my dream car. By the way, it's driving through a desert place, identified only as Somewhere, which in real life is the road to the so-called Volcano House, a historic and futuristic house in the middle of the California desert. But in the music video, the Volcano House becomes the Shady Aftermath Artist Development Center. Inside, we see screens showing scenes from Eminem's Without Me music video, reinforcing the idea that this place is a kind of secret laboratory for the label's artists. And in the next scene, we see 50 Cent undergoing surgery. Doctors implant chips in his back, as if, after being hit by 9 shots, he not only survived, but was also rebuilt much stronger than he was before. Now, like an indestructible android. Meanwhile, from above the operating room, Eminem and Dr. Dre watch everything closely. Dressed as scientists, they supervise an experiment as if they were overseeing the development of a secret weapon to take over the rap world. Then we see the famous scene. That was a brilliant visual reference to 50 Cent's discipline and resilience. In addition, he also appears running on a treadmill, symbolizing 50's persistence and determination in his pursuit of success. Every part of this music video has a symbolic meaning. Even the nightclub scenes, which aren't there randomly, if you notice, the nightclub is actually inside the training center. It's like a controlled environment, where the sound of the new rapper, 50 Cent, is being put to the test. What a lot of people don't know is that the original music video also included a shooting range, where the members of D Unit practiced target shooting while 50 Cent rapped to the camera. But unfortunately, the scene was censored and removed from most versions. According to the director, the scene was a way to include something symbolic that represented 50 Cent's story. But even with the censorship, 50 made a point of including this bloody story in the lyrics of Inda Club, saying, "I got hit by a few bullets, but I don't walk with a limp. I'm good, man." I think it's really cool the way he says it. Chill, you know, I'm alright. Like it was a mosquito bite. Like I got shot a bunch of times, but I'm good. Anyway, the music video ends with Eminem and Dr. Dre watching satisfied, showing that 50 Cent passed the test and was ready for stardom. On January 7th, 2003, the song Inda Club was played for the first time on radio and television as the debut single from the album Get Rich or Die Tryin' on the Billboard charts. On the Hot 100, which is the ranking of the 100 most played songs in the United States, Inda Club debuted at 67th place. But every week, thanks to the explosive increase in radio requests, it quickly climbed dozens of positions. In a short time, Inda Club reached first place on the American charts and the top spot in more than 20 countries around the world. As for Get Rich or Die Tryin', which, besides Inda Club, featured other heavy classics like Many Men. 21 questions. And I'm at peak. the album. It defined the musical taste of my generation, and it achieved the incredible feat of selling 872,000 copies in just 4 days, being one of the most successful debuts in rap history and generating revenue of over $10 million. In other words, in less than a week, 50 Cent had already made his money back several times over. The investment by Dr. Dre and Eminem in Indie Club was a celebration. It was the battle cry of someone who promised to achieve the impossible or die trying. Trying after being shot 9 times, abandoned by his own friends and thrown to rock bottom. 50 Cent had every reason to give up, but despite the pain, he kept going with unshakable self-confidence and became one of the greatest rappers in history. No, 50 Cent wasn't a machine or an invincible lab-created cyborg. What made him unstoppable? It was a detail about his mindset that all of us can access in our own as well. For that, you just need to understand a simple but powerful truth. The only person who can stop you is yourself. Because the person who gives up on themselves, man, no one can save. But the one who trusts and never gives up on themselves, no one can stop. But what's most impressive is that 50 Cent already had this mindset even before he was shot. It was thanks to this mindset that in 1999, 50 was able to face a rapper who was much bigger than him at the time, J.A. Rule. And I'm talking about really facing him, both in music and literally in a fight. If you want to know more about this beef, just click on the video up there.